Hi friends, it's Grace and welcome back to another video. This is very exciting because it's the first video with my new background, new setup. So if you missed my bookshelf organization video, you can check that out. It shows how I got all of this together. Obviously you can only see a snapshot of it in my background, but I got new shelves and I'm really happy about it. And I'm really happy that, first of all, that I have a new filming location, but an underrated part of this setup, and something that maybe you didn't know from watching my videos, is that I used to sit on the floor because I had short bookshelves, so obviously they were not tall enough for me to do anything but sit on the floor and actually have my books in the background. Now I get to sit on a chair. So this feels like moving onward and upward in the world. A very underrated aspect of this is that I now get the privilege of sitting in a chair. I'm very happy about it. However, with that being said, this is gonna be my September wrap up, and there are a couple of books that I started but didn't finish in the month of September, so I'm not gonna actually mention them here. They'll roll over into October, or at least I will tell you what they are. That was Babel by R.F. Kuang and Cursed Bunny by Bora Chung, but I'm not going to talk about them because of course I didn't finish them in the month of September. So I did finish 5 things in the month of September, and honestly, it was a pretty phenomenal reading month overall. I had one book that could be considered relatively average and nothing special, but the 4 other books were things that I loved, so I really couldn't have asked for better. So every month I kind of decide on the fly how I'm gonna organize the order that I talk about the books, and I think that this month I'm just gonna start from the top, start with the best, talk about it, and work my way through. There aren't that many books, and they're pretty much all things that I loved, so I figured I may as well start with the 5 stars. So first up, and this is also the first thing I read in the month of September, is Migrations by Charlotte McConaghy. And at this point, Charlotte McConaghy, despite only having 2 published books and 2 books that I've read, is definitely a favorite author for me. And even though Migrations has gotten a decent amount of popularity, she's definitely underrated on the fantasy side of booktube, in my opinion. And I mean, it's almost not even fair to say that because she's not a fantasy writer, but I just love her books so much that I feel like I want her to get recognition even from fantasy booktubers, which is just my opinion. But Migrations follows the story of our main character Franny, and she is basically at a point in her life where in her personal life she's kind of having a disaster, but she has attached herself to this task of following the very last flock of Arctic terns, which are birds, on their last migration as part of a research project to try and track them. And the way that she wants to do this is she needs to get a ship to take her on, and she tries to target a fishing ship because fish are very scarce now in the oceans, and she wants to incentivize this boat to take her on because if she can successfully follow these birds, the birds are going to be able to lead the fishermen to fish as well. So they're both going to mutually benefit from this agreement. But along the way, the crew has their own personal issues too, each and every one of them as an individual, but they start to find out things about Franny's past. And the way that this book is written, we also get interspersements of Franny's past, like flashbacks, and you start to discover kind of that she has some dark things in her past and things that could affect their journey at the present day, and things kind of go sideways. But the real meat and potatoes of this book is 2 things, and it's basically the same 2 things in Once There Were Wolves, her other book. It's the exploration of the depth of human emotion as one, and human relationships, and then the intricacies and emotional parts of nature and humans' relationship with nature. And so I think that those are both things that she does extremely well, because this book in particular, it takes place in this sort of near future, like alternate but possible timeline where we have pretty much driven the earth to extinction. Like, most bird species are gone. Most animal species are gone. Like, we are dealing with a world that is essentially barren, and humans have made it so. And this state of things in nature kind of parallels Franny's life and this bit of emotional melancholy and bleakness in terms of human relationships. Like, this is definitely not a happy book, but at the same time, it's not depressing. Like, parts of it are very emotionally heavy, but on the whole, it's an exploration of where these characters are going emotionally. And for me, all of these things culminate together in a really, really satisfying ending. It's people being pushed absolutely to the brink and then seeing what they're made of and where they go, and the emotions are just so complex. And I think that I just love the way that Charlotte McConaghy does them. I think that that's just what it comes down to, is I really love the way that she writes, and so far both of her books have been favorites for me, and I'm pretty sure I like Migrations more than Once There Were Wolves, and I'm pretty sure that this will be a favorite and will just continue to stick with me, because it's been, I guess, about a month now, and it still absolutely is going strong, like in my head, with me continuing to think about it. So yeah, absolutely 5 stars for Migrations by Charlotte McConaghy. Next up, the second 5-star read for the month of September is Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. And so this, even harder to talk about without spoilers, seeing as it's the 6th book in the City Watch series of Discworld, and me and Ben have been buddy reading this entire series together, and I can confidently say that despite the excellence of the early books, this is my favorite, and this is like the height and perfection of the City Watch series, in my opinion. Like, this is a Samuel Vimes showcase book, and it's just a perfect exploration of his character, and it was genius on Terry Pratchett's part because the setting that he crafts here and the specific circumstances are a perfect way for him to explore Samuel Vimes' character and his character growth, while just having like that same absolute ridiculousness of a City Watch plot, and basically just like having all of the things that are great about Ankh-Morpork and the characters and all the intricacies and jokes, but applying them in a very real way to like the themes of politics and revolution and how the common man is involved in these things and how Sam Vimes' character has grown throughout the series. So yeah, this is the favorite of the series for me. I don't think that will change with the last 2 books, and it was just phenomenal. And I guess this one I don't have as much to say about, just because, like, again, spoilers, but if you're reading this series, I would personally be looking forward to this book, and I hope that you love it. And if you're not reading this series, I would recommend it. Next up, we have a 4.5-star book or collection of short stories, and quite frankly, this is 4.5 stars on like a technicality, because it is also phenomenal, and that is The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu. And the reason this is 4.5 stars is purely because there were just a few stories in here that didn't do it for me. Like, probably 2 stories that I didn't love as much as the others, but there are so many in here that are absolutely wonderful, and I am so impressed by him. This is the first thing that I've read by Ken Liu, and this is like absolutely the perfect introduction to him, and I am so much more motivated to read the Dandelion Dynasty now that I have had this taste of his writing and what he can do. Like, I was so impressed by the fact that he has this unique ability, maybe not unique, but uniquely outstanding ability to have a great idea for a short story, but also like the great execution of a short story, because so often in my experience, a short story will have a great premise, a great concept behind it, but in such a short amount of pages, I'm not left with the emotional impact because of the execution. Whereas I found that he really had both in so many of these stories. Just looking at the list, like the table of contents, standouts for me are State Change, Good Hunting, The Literomancer, The Paper Menagerie, All the Flavors, The Litigation Master and the Monkey King, and The Man Who Ended History, a documentary. Like, thinking about it more, I could probably give you ratings for each stories, but I feel like all of those ones that I just mentioned are easy for me to say, yeah, they're 5 stars, because I look at the list and when I see the names, I can vividly conjure what happened in the story, what my feelings were. Like, as someone who is not a visual reader, I don't get that a whole lot in terms of like the vividly imagining of things and the vivid memory. Like, to be honest, I feel like I have a terrible memory. So when I can remember something that well, that's how I know that I loved it. And the last story in this collection, The Man Who Ended History, was the perfect culmination of every theme that he had been working towards in this collection. Like, you have the themes of translation, you have the themes of basically like various Asian cultures and histories and mythologies. You have the relationship in the past like century and a half or maybe 2 centuries between the like Western world and the Eastern world, and the tensions and how people from these cultures like view things differently and are fundamentally different in the way that they've been raised and the things that they know. You have themes of family, you have romance, you have themes of like what it means to be a person and that fact that you can be whoever you would like to be at any time. And there are so like, it's so rich. So really, like, this is 4.5, but it's obvious by how much praise I have to give it that I was really impressed, and I think that this is really outstanding. There were just like the stories that didn't work as well for me, I think were just a little too abstract. And I personally appreciate it a lot more when he throws in like emotionally grounded characters to just bring you back into it, like to focus you and ground you rather than exploring more abstract concepts. That's the best way I can think of to describe it. But yeah, I loved this and I would 110% recommend it. Now, we have quite a transition in terms of content to the other book that I rated 4.5 stars, but that was Finlay Donovan, Knox and Dead by Elle Cosimano, which I listened to on audiobook. And this is the second book in the Finlay Donovan series, where honestly, like, this is just a pure enjoyment. Like, this is not meant to be any sort of like deep and meaningful and like thematic type of story. This is literally just like so much fun and so entertaining. And I mean, on a deeper level, like, I do emotionally connect to the characters. I do really love these characters, and I think that Elle Cosimano does a really good job of making them layered and relatable, and like my ability to ground myself in the story with them is definitely still central to my level of enjoyment. I didn't like this book quite as much as I did the first one. Finlay Donovan is killing it, but I still, like, I flew through this because I always wanted to be listening to it, like when I was in the car or when I was going on a walk or whatever that may be. And I'm really, really looking forward to when the third book comes out because it's not out yet. So maybe I will re-borrow these from my library at some point, listen to them again, because they're just really easy to get through. Like, so fun, so funny. Like, I think that she is really funny. And so, like, the stakes are high enough, but the scope is small enough that I think they're just like pretty much perfectly executed in terms of plot and drawing me along and my interest. And yeah, I loved it. And then the last book that I have to talk about that I read in the month of September, and my lowest rated, unfortunately, was my patron pick, but it's been on my TBR for a long while, so I'm glad that I finally got to it regardless, is For the Wolf by Hannah Whitten. And so I ended up giving this 3.5 stars, which of course is not a negative rating, but I just felt like rather averagely about this book. I was hoping to like it more, so it was a little bit disappointing, but I think on the whole, I thought that this had cool ideas that I just wasn't the hugest fan of the execution of. Like, I really like, okay, well, first of all, this is about the second daughter of a royal family where the first daughter is meant to inherit the throne and the second daughter is meant to be sacrificed to the Wilderwood to appease the wolf, and it's part of their religion that they hope that one of these sacrifices will cause the wolf to give them back the 5 kings, which are historical figures that are basically known as their gods, and the 5 kings went into the forest hundreds of years ago and never came out, and the wolf and the forest are essentially seen to be holding them hostage, and they make sacrifices in the hopes that they will be given back to them one day. And so this whole concept is cool, and I thought that it was going to be very fairy tale-esque, which it is in a way, but it also felt maybe a touch too modern in other ways for me. So things that I can compliment are the magic system. I really liked, I don't even know if it's fair to call it a magic system because it's sort of like an isolated phenomenon about the forest, but I really liked the forest. And I really liked that when the forest magic is in someone, it has effects on them. There is a consequence to using the magic. I'm usually a really big fan of that. And I liked the main character, Red, and I liked her sister, and I liked the wolf. And like other characters I felt relatively neutral towards, but I think that the culmination of the plot and the villains especially just ended up falling flat for me. And I don't know if I can explain exactly why, but it felt like we were going through the motions of the plot, and then when the big moments were happening, they were supposed to be really impactful, but I wasn't feeling it. Like I wasn't feeling the emotional impact of them because for whatever reason, I just hadn't been able to form that full attachment earlier on and as we built it up. So I think that the whole thing, like the whole plot, ended up not like having that impact on me. And the things that I was most interested in were the magics. And I did think that the religion was cool, but I don't know. It just didn't read in a way that I was the biggest fan of, I guess. So that did end up being a middle of the road book for me, a 3.5 star, and I'm glad I read it regardless because it has been on my shelf for over a year, and it was about time that I read it. So I may continue with the second book. I'm not entirely sure. It's definitely not a priority for me, but it also wasn't a bad experience. And those types of books can sometimes be the hardest to talk about because I really didn't feel strongly any which way about it. However, with that being said, those are the 5 things that I finished in the month of September. So on the whole, a really positive and really good reading month, even if I wish I could have finished more things. I'm really glad that the things that I did manage to read were high quality for the most part. So I loved a lot of these books, and that's reflected in the high ratings, and I would love it if you would tell me your thoughts on them if you've read them. So drop me a comment and let me know. I'd love to chat. That's it for this one. So please like this video if you liked it. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. I post new videos every Monday and Thursday. And as always, I will have my Discord, Patreon, and socials linked in my description if you're interested in any of that stuff or supporting the channel in any way. I greatly appreciate it. So that is all, and I will see you in the next one. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye!